On the 19th of April, in La Mesa, Honduras, I was in the back of a CH-47 Chinook helicopter from the 159th Aviation Company and based out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. They were a supporting element for Task Force 160. I had been tasked by Wally World to deliver some maps to them so that they had terrain maps to get into Roos Roos, the area that we just talked about with the cocaine kitchens. While taxiing in the aircraft, in the rear of the aircraft's main rotor blades meshed together. The aircraft subsequently came apart in flight. Fortunately, we were at a hover. Injuries sustained, no one died in the crash. Several of us sustained back and neck injuries. I received injuries which ended up causing compression fractures in 2 places in my back. This precluded me from flight duties for at least a year. However, because of the problems that resulted in working for the National Security Council, for the military, and for the CIA, who were all 3 my bosses in Honduras, we found that it was necessary for me to leave the restricting environment of the military. There were too many questions asked. As you'll see in the Tatum Chronicles, there are documents in there that talk about medevac flights being made and commanded by other than medevac assets. These were military messages being passed back and forth between Special Operations Command, Readiness Command, and other commands which were involved in the area of operations. So in April of 1986, I was recruited into and accepted the job of working for what is called today an operational subgroup. OSGs in 1986 were formed by authorization of the TWIG, which is the Terrorist Incident Working Group. In turn, the Terrorist Incident Working Group was authorized to be formed by the Special Situation Group, which was authorized by President Reagan in 1982. The Special Situation Group is a group which is chaired by our command elements of national security, defense intelligence, CIA, military intelligence, and other assets of the federal government, to include certain cabinets. This particular Special Situation Group chairs only in the event of a national security problem. There's a standing group which was formed to support this Special Situation Group called TWIG, the Terrorist Incident Working Group. This standing group was our command element for the operational subgroups. Under the National Security Decision Directive in 1986, we were allowed to employ the assets of civilian and foreign personnel to work with us in the OSGs. As an officer in the OSG, I was primarily tasked to the neutralization section. Neutralization section deals in aligning foreign nationals with the interests of the United States government. Let me give you an example. If you all recall, during the Nicaraguan rebellion, all we wanted Nicaragua to do, the Ortega regime, was to hold free elections. That's the whole purpose, supposedly, of the rebellion that we funded, of the Contras going into rebellious war with the Sandinista government. That was not accomplished. In 1989, it was decided that we'll never win this way. It's a guerrilla war. We all know where guerrilla wars end up. We were in Vietnam in a guerrilla war forever. And it wasn't functioning properly. It wasn't coming into a line. The alignment wasn't being done. It wasn't being accomplished. So it was decided that the OSG neutralization section would neutralize Mr. Ortega into alignment. To neutralize a person, we could do one of 3 things. We could intimidate them into it, we could coerce them into it, or we could take them out and prepare the next guy to align with our needs. Mr. Ortega, after being visited by an emissary of the United States on several occasions, refused to hold free elections. We decided at that point the refusal was unacceptable. We then sent an OSG member to him. That OSG member explained to Mr. Ortega that you have 2 weeks to announce free elections. If you don't in 2 weeks, we gave him the name of the man who was a very good friend of his and a second cousin that would be terminated, regardless of what you put around him. And we challenged him at that time, put a battalion of your best soldiers around that man. He's still going to die if you don't hold free elections. 2 weeks later, his cousin died by missile fire. Within 2 weeks, Mr. Ortega announced the free elections for Nicaragua. The neutralization. As I say, neutralization in that particular instance took form of a termination which was actually a form of coercion, coercion or intimidation to align him. That's happened around the world. In that particular instance, I have to say that I believe that that was in the interest of the United States. And let me tell you why. When we put defense satellites into orbit, the telemetry for many of our satellites didn't come out where we wanted them to come out. It came out at a little Central American country. We have a place called a tactical site in Honduras, which needed to be protected at the time because the telemetry of these defense satellites and intelligence satellites all came together there. We needed to protect the borders, and having instability there with all of this data and information flowing right into that area was imperative to national security. As the OSGs grew, so did our taskings. Not only did they grow, but they changed. Instead of working directly for the United States and in the interest of the United States, we found that the operational subgroups were used on an international basis to provide alignment for other countries, allies. We found that the primary countries that we were supporting were the G7 group of companies that all of you are aware of. And today it's the G7 plus one. I think we've included Russia in that just recently. Any ranking official of these G7 countries could ask for tasking from us. We would recognize that tasking, we would evaluate the tasking, and we would provide support for that tasking, if not direct, indirect support for that tasking. However, any neutralizations that were performed through our section had to be performed by order of a U.S. official. That usually required, if it included intimidation or coercion, it was simply required by a ranking member of our National Security Council. If it went beyond that, it required the signature and authorization of the Executive Office of the United States.